The last few days we've been looking at addition and subtraction, and we kind of did a little bit of multiplying yesterday when we were distributing. But what I specifically want to look at today is multiplication. And so as you can see, I've created even a table just like I did when we did the addition and subtraction lesson. And so I want to go through the multiplication part this time, okay? So multiplying, usually what will happen is you are looking at two things maybe that you're going to be multiplying together. So again, I gave you this a is some number. This dot is just using to be times, but you know it could also look something like this. Also means multiply, okay? So a parenthesis could also be multiply. But whatever you do when you multiply things together, you get a product of some sort, okay? And here is just a little table again, just like you recognize hopefully from the addition and subtraction lesson. So if the first number is positive and you multiply that to another positive number, their product's going to be positive too. If you have here in rows 2 and 3 again, if you have one that's positive, one that's negative, you're going to end up getting a negative product. Same here, a negative and a positive combination will give you a negative product, and then if you multiply two things that are negative, you'll get a negative product at the end of that. Okay, so that's basically how you read that chart. And so let's say you have lots and lots of things to multiply together. Again, I want you to get in the habit of multiplying from left to right. I know maybe for some of them you're not seeing the purpose of that right now, but I just want you to get in the habit of it, because later on, again, once we get into more complicated things, multiplying and looking at things from left to right is going to be really, really important. So if I had, let's say, lots of things to multiply, 2 times 4 times 5 times, I don't know, let's say 1, make it easy here. I have lots of things to multiply from left to right. Take it 2 by 2. 2 times 4 is 8. And then I'm going to bring everything else down. Take these two. 8 times 5 is 40. And then I have that 1 that's still there. 40 times 1 is just going to give me 40. Okay, so piece by piece, take it left to right. Here's just a quick thing to help you out. If I know that the signs usually are what get people confused sometimes, so this is just a quick tip to help you out. So let's say you have lots and lots of things to multiply together, and you're just trying to decide what sign the answer is going to look like. If you have an even number of negative numbers, so what's an even number again? An even number would be something like 2, 4, 6, 8. Remember your even numbers? So if you have an even number of negative numbers that you're multiplying together, remember that the answer will always be positive. Okay? So for example, let's say I had negative 3 times negative 5 times negative 2 times negative, I don't know, 2 again. So counting this up, how many negative numbers do I have here? I have the negative 3 is negative, this is negative, this is negative, this is negative. So all four numbers are negative. That means that my answer for sure is going to end up being positive. Okay, and let's see why. So using my left to right rule, negative 3 times negative 5 is going to be positive 15. Okay, bringing down this guy. Positive 15 times negative 2 is going to give me negative 30. Bring down that negative 2. Negative 30 times negative 2. Those negatives are going to cancel out to give me a positive. And I end up with positive 60. Okay, so that's just an example of showing you guys if you have an even number of negative numbers in your problem, the answer will end up being positive. And remember, this is only true, or this is specifically true to multiplying. Okay, remember that's what our key thing is that we're doing today. Likewise, if you have an odd number of negative numbers, so remember odd would be like 1, 3, 5, 7. So an odd number of negative numbers, you're going to end up with a negative answer. So let's look at an example here. So maybe let's use those same four numbers I used in the above one here. So if I have -3, -5, -2, but maybe instead of this making this last one a -2, I'll make it a +2. Let's see how that works. So again, working from left to right, -3 times -5 is going to give me +15 times -2. So +15 times -2, these two guys right here. +15 times -2 is going to give me -30. Then I still have this last 2 that I need to do something with. -30 times 2 is going to keep the answer negative, but make it -60. Okay, so that's how that works. And even looking up here at our chart here, so how many negative numbers do I have here in this first line? None. Okay, so also 0 adds into here too. Okay, so none, so the product's going to be positive. Here I have, in the second line, I have 1 negative, so that's going to make the product negative. Same in the third line, I have 1 negative, the answer's going to be negative. I have 2 negatives here, so I'm actually a liar because the product, when you have 2 negative numbers, is actually positive. Sorry. So, good thing we checked that. So, the product of 2 negative numbers is positive. If you don't believe me, here we go. 2 negative numbers, -7 times -8. These 2 negatives are going to cancel it out, right? So 56. So make sure you change that on your chart if you copied that. This is really 2 negatives multiplied together are really going to be a positive. Okay. Some things not to forget. We have some special rules that are hopefully you'll never forget. But if I have a number and I multiply it by 0, so let's say I have some number times 0, remember anything times 0 is going to give me 0. So even if I have 33 times 0, anything times 0 is going to be 0. 1,712 times 0 is going to be 0. Okay. Some other ones not to forget. Any number times 1 is just itself. Okay. So if I had 45 times 1, it's just 45. Maybe -73 times 1. Remember, even though it's negative, it's just itself. So any number times 1 is itself. Last one to remember is that any number times -1, you just take the opposite sign. Okay, so I started originally with a +a, but once I multiply a -1 to it, it turns into the opposite. So if I had 52 times -1, I know the answer is 52 for sure, but since it's a -1, I gotta change it to the opposite. -300 times -1, so I start off with a negative. So if the -1 multiplying to it's going to give me the opposite, then I know for sure it's going to be 300, but the opposite of that would be positive, okay? The opposite of the original 300. So just some things not to forget about multiplying. Those are just basic ones that I'm sure you knew already, but I just wanted to make sure you guys remember, okay? And so let's go ahead and look at some examples. And here we go. So starting with number 1, let's do this. So let's say I don't want to know the answer yet. I just want to know if this number 1 is going to give me a positive or negative product. So how many negatives do I have here? I have 1. So is that an odd number or even? Odd. So if I have an odd number of negatives, my answer I know for sure is going to be negative. Okay, I don't know why I put a 1 there, but it's going to be negative. And now let's combine. So when we multiply things, you want to multiply the numbers together. We call them coefficients in math, but the numbers in here are 6 and 3. So multiply those guys together to get 18. And then when we're multiplying, we can actually combine these x and y's together. So remember when we were adding, if it looked like this? When we were adding or subtracting, this was all we could do to it because it wasn't a like term. We would just stop there. But when we're multiplying, we can actually combine those two guys together to make 18 or -18. We can actually multiply these two together, the x and the y, and combine them to make xy. So remember that rule only applies you can only combine them if we're multiplying. Okay, so if we're adding or subtracting, you cannot. You're going to have to leave them as two separate things. Okay. Looking at number 2, let's decide. So here's an example. Are we multiplying or are we adding / subtracting? Okay. We're adding / subtracting because what's separating this 6p in the parenthesis? What's separating it is this plus sign right here, right? So that tells me that I'm not going to be multiplying them together. That's what I kept telling you guys in the other video, that if there's a plus or a minus separating this and the parenthesis, it means we're adding or subtracting, so we're not multiplying. So we know that this combination, we end up with this combination again, okay? And what do I really have here? So I really have a minus here. Okay, remember the minus overpowers the plus when we're adding or subtracting. So 6p minus 11p. Okay, if you need to draw your number line, what it's telling me is start at 6p and you want to go in the negative direction towards 11. So I have, how many do I have here? I'm going to end up with negative 5. And can I combine these p's? Yes, because they're a like term. So I end up with negative 5p for number 2. Okay. Looking at our last one, so this is 1, 2, and 3 is kind of a big review here. But looking at our last one, I end up right here. Let's head straight to the parenthesis. Am I going to be distributing something, or is this an add or subtract problem? Good, okay, it's going to be a distribute problem because what is not in between the 3 and the parenthesis? There is not a plus or minus, so it's going to be a distribute. Remember, I told you take the number that's directly to the left of the parenthesis and also observe the sign. Okay, so we're going here and here. So negative 3 times 2r is going to give me negative 6r. Negative 3 times negative 9. I have two negatives, going to turn into a plus 27, and I still have this 5r here, so I'm just going to drop them down. Any like terms here? I have a 5r and a negative 6r. That's going to leave me with just a regular negative r plus 27. Can I combine these guys together? No, okay, because since it's a plus in between, I cannot combine them together, so it is not going to be negative 27r, okay? It's not going to be that. We can't combine them together because they're not a like term. And remember, like terms are for adding and subtracting, and since we're adding and subtracting, no like term, only multiplying. Now, if it looked like this, and there was a multiplication, then we could make it look like that. But since it's a plus sign, we leave it the way it is, and that's our final answer. Okay. And there we go. That's it.